I am glad you're back. This is week 4. This is the week you've been waiting for. We are wanting to bring you a great video. What we're going to do, something exciting, on Tuesday night. We kind of have shot a video of Professor Brown from St. Louis Christian College, and he speaks on 2 Corinthians 3:12 through 18. So something that would be great is if you went and checked out that verse. What's going to happen is as he preaches, we've got some students together to kind of act out what that means. And the whole idea of it is that we want these students to be bold and to live out their faith as a light for Christ. And the phrase we're going to use is called being unveiled. Talking about Moses in the Old Testament when he used to veil his face because the glory of God would radiate from his face so much, and the Israelites couldn't stand it. They couldn't look at it. And so then in 2 Corinthians 3:12 through 18, it talks about how we need to unveil our faces and let God's Spirit, His glory, shine so others can see it. And so we have kind of got this video. It's just going to be kind of a neat way, a different way to bring out a topic, and then also to encourage the students. And that's the point in the week that we build the rest of the week off of. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're going to be pushing this idea of unveiled, of sharing our life of Christ, with Christ, being bold. Kind of cool thing Danny Ferris is doing is he's going to be speaking on, I think it's 2 Thessalonians 4. It talks about being sanctified, being different, set apart, and being bold, living that way. And so we're going to have this video ready. We're going to pop it up sometime in the next week or two for you to watch before camp. Maybe just a preview. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do. But be looking out for that. Be reading that verse. That's what we want this week of overcoming idols. To just show students this is the way you used to live. Now it's time to be bold. Get away these idols in our life. Unveil your life. Live bold for the glory of God. That's your video for this week. Next week is our last one. And then it's camp, so be ready. I'm excited. See y'all.
Monsters vs. Aliens. It's one of my kids' favorite movies right now. I know it's kind of old, but it's made the cut. It's saved on our DVR. But if you know this movie, there's a lady named Susan, and the movie starts out with her on her wedding day, and her and her fiance Derek have an interaction, and she finds out that he's kind of self-absorbed. But as she finishes her conversation with him, there's a meteor coming right at her. And apparently she watched football because she ran right up underneath it. And what happens is that this meteor changes her. And she doesn't realize it at first, but as she's standing there at the altar, Derek says, "You're glowing." And she thinks it's just a compliment, but no, actually, she's glowing. She starts to turn green, her eyes get real bright. And that's kind of like what we have going on in Exodus chapter 34. You see, Moses has been with God. He's gotten the 10 Commandments for the second time. And it says that as he came down, he didn't realize that his face was radiant. He was glowing. And what happened was all the people were afraid. And it tells us there that whenever he went into God's presence, he would unveil himself. But when he came back and spoke to the people, after giving God's message, he would reveal himself because of the fear. See, that's the backdrop to our story, our text that we're dealing with tonight. 2 Corinthians chapter 3. And it seems as we look at this passage, what we find out is that we too, as Christians, as followers of Jesus Christ, are supposed to be radiant. We're supposed to be glowing. Let's read the text. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, starting at verse 12. Therefore, since we have such a hope, we are very bold. We are not like Moses, who would put a veil over his face to keep the Israelites from gazing at it while the radiance was fading away, but their minds were made dull. For to this day the same veil remains when the old covenant is read. It has not been removed, because only in Christ is it taken away. Even to this day, when Moses is read, a veil covers their hearts, but whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we who with unveiled faces all reflect the Lord's glory are being transformed into his likeness with ever increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. See, I feel there's 4 elements that we have to look at if we're truly going to understand this passage, if we're going to truly understand the glow we as Christians should have. The first is the element of contrast. Before we ever get to this passage, what we find is that Paul is contrasting the law of Moses to the gospel of Christ. And we see throughout the passage there, he's referring to the law of Moses as a covenant that brings death, but the gospel of Christ brings life. He refers to it as a covenant written in letters. But this covenant we have is by the Spirit. The old covenant is written on stone, but the new covenant is written on the heart. The old covenant brings condemnation, but the gospel of Christ brings righteousness. The glory of the old covenant is fading, but the glory of our covenant, the new covenant, lasts forever. You see, that's the reality. What it is that we have this new covenant, and it's contrasted between the two, and that's what the therefore is there for in verse 12. See, Paul is letting us know that we have a different covenant, something that should be significant, something that should move in our lives, something that should transform the world around us. I think of when I was a kid. You see, I seem to have always been behind in electronics. See, when I was a kid, we had an Atari. And then I can't remember having another game system until maybe it was the Nintendo. But when I got a Nintendo, the Super Nintendo was out and the Sega Genesis. And the reality of it is this. I was in Sam's the other day and they had the throwback Atari. It's like, who wants to play that? In my house, we have a Kinect. You know, now you can play games where your whole body is in motion. It's not just a joystick. You're involved in the game. And what happens is we get this new technology, new game systems where your whole self can be involved. The others become obsolete. And that's what Paul is doing when he contrasts the law of Moses to the gospel of Christ. The glory of that covenant is nothing compared to the glory we have in Christ Jesus. We have to understand the element of contrast to understand how Christians are to be radiant. We also have to understand the element of confidence. If we read verse 12 again, it says, therefore, since we have such a hope. And we miss the understanding of hope a whole lot, because in our minds, when we think of I hope for something, it is wishful thinking. But the biblical concept of hope was not wishful thinking, but it was a thinking of expectation. It was something that you expected and you believed was going to happen. I think of my son, and when you have children as a parent, you can never tell them that they're going to get to do anything and not follow through. I think if I can hear his voice in my mind right now, Daddy, you said. Example would be my son likes to wake up at night and come and jump in the bed with his mother and I, because he gets afraid or whatnot. And one of the ways we try to get him to stay in his own bed at night is we play on his desire, and that is donuts. My son loves donuts. And if I tell him, son, if you stay in your bed all night, in the morning before school, we'll go by the donut shop. My son has a hope, an expectation that he knows that if he stays in his bed, if when he wakes up in the morning, he's in his own bed, we'll be going to the donut shop. And that's the reality of this confidence that we have, is that we expect this covenant that Paul is telling us about makes all the difference in the world. And we can expect the reality that we can have the righteousness. We can have this life that it brings to us.